Are we not all performers in some way? If so, are the boundaries between art and life there for a reason? In the early part of the 20th century, artists from different fields experimented with breaking down those barriers. They wanted to create an art that would be integral to life. Part of that effort was to destroy the barriers between artistic disciplines. Artists, musicians, writers, actors, and dancers joined together to push the limits of what we understood as theater, art, poetry, and ballet. The Russian futurists and Dada artists began experimenting with multimedia productions on stage and film, which challenged traditional forms and often outraged audiences. These early experiments gave rise to an art genre known as performance art. Performance art is sometimes hard to define and sometimes hard to understand. Generally speaking, one might say performance art combines time, space, performers, and a relationship between the performers and the audience. Performance art strives to induce a visceral rather than passive response from its audience. Concurrent with the development of new forms in painting and sculpture that was the hallmark of much modern and postmodern art, performance art questions what art can and could be. In the 1950s and 60s, several groups of loosely associated artists rejected traditional art-making methods as restrictive and tradition-bound, creating distance between the artist and the viewer. The Gutai group in Japan and Fluxus artists in America and Europe took their actions into the streets and alternative spaces, eliciting interaction with an unsuspecting public. Allan Kaprow arranged events he called happenings, where the audience was an active and critical component in loosely choreographed events. This art was intentionally provocative. Their performance works attempted to highlight the absurdities in our traditions and customs and the assumptions we make about the world. It was made to make us uncomfortable. Many performance artists manipulate their own bodies in their work. Sometimes they explore the limits of human endurance, searching for enhanced self-awareness or transcendent states of consciousness. These works place the artist in extreme conditions and can be as brief as the flight of a bullet or take months or years to complete. In singing sculpture, Gilbert and George used themselves to create an infinitely complex sculptural form. Bruce Naumann's early experiments were based on the notion that if he was an artist, then anything he did in his studio must be art. Social issues are often the subject of performance art. Women artists have led the way in challenging sexism and social injustice, addressing issues of feminine creative energy, gender roles, sexuality, and abuse. Taking on the art establishment or political parties and challenging the status quo of the ruling classes sometimes puts performance artists in professional or even legal jeopardy. Just as performance art defies easy definition, it is also difficult to judge. What criteria can be used to evaluate art that rejects traditional form and, through its spontaneity, is unpredictable? Some performance artists ascribe to the postmodern idea that the notion of judgment itself is outdated, tainted by cultural bias. In any event, performance art as a genre remains popular and continues to challenge the ground beneath our feet.